My name is Carma Corcoran, and I am a enrolled citizen of the Chippewa-Cree Nation. I direct the Indian Law program at Lewis and Clark Law School in Portland, Oregon. I'm also an adjunct professor at Portland State University and at Salish Kootenai Tribal College. I also have a business, Carma Corcoran Consulting, and I'm an author, so that pretty much takes care of my day. My childhood was like a lot of Indian children born in the 1950s and 1960s. I came from a very large family. I had a lot of brothers and one sister. There were a few different fathers, and we were a family that lived in abject poverty, and our family imploded. Our parents were, their parental rights were taken away, and we were taken out of our home, and we went different places. So some of the boys went into foster homes. Some of the boys were already involved, like in the work farms of the Montana state system. And then 3 of us were actually formally adopted out. So I was a little bit of an older child. I was 6, almost 6, and so I knew what was going on. Also, I was the oldest girl, and so I was responsible for my siblings. And because our parents were alcoholics and away from home a great deal of the time, it was really my responsibility to take care of my siblings. I remember cutting their hair, sourcing food, just trying to make sure that they were okay. And so that was a very trauma-inducing childhood. I was in foster care, and I'm just so fortunate. I probably had the best foster family ever, and they were just wonderful. And they lived very close to the reservation. They knew of my family. And so once I was formally adopted, I never truly lost contact. When I was in my adopted home, I didn't have direct exposure, and I really longed for it. And I remember when I used to go to my foster parents to visit for the summer, I would always sort of secretly hope that I was going to run into a family member. I used to think, I wish I could go see them. In retrospect, I think if I'd asked my foster parents, they would have taken me. They did take me to the reservation different times when I was there, and so I really appreciated that a lot. One time we were living in Bozeman, Montana, which is where my adopted family moved when they adopted me, because they had been living in the border town of my reservation, and that it was concerning to them, probably caseworkers, that I would see my family a lot in town or wherever, or my family would know where I was at. And so it was funny because Indians figure stuff out. So we were at my house in Bozeman. I was a little girl, probably 8. And so there was this knock on the door, and here's these 4 Indians. And so my parents opened the door, and they explained who they were. And they were from my tribe. And one of them was an uncle of mine named Four Souls. And Four Souls was a medicine man. And they came to check on me and see me. And I was so moved, and I was so peaceful in their presence. And my adopted parents were very welcoming to them. And I remember we sat around in a circle, and they, talked to my adopted parents. And, it was just a magical time for me. And so I always had that connection there, that longing. And then, of course, as I got older, I would do research on my own about my family, about being a Cree person. I went back to school when I was 40 years old to get my bachelor's degree. It was my gift to myself. I had always thought that I would get a college degree, and then life happened, and it was like, I'm 40, I'm going to do this. And so I really enjoyed it. And then I, of course, decided I needed to get my master's degree. And my master's degree was really important because it was really focused on what did I want to do. And so I got a master's in public administration. At that time, I was really interested in working in the nonprofit world. And I took all these classes that were in kind of a native governance track. It was an incredible experience. It was the first time I had ever had a class where it was like 98% Native students. After that first class, I cried. I mean, I just went home and cried. And in that class, I made a couple good friends that are still friends today. And so I ended up going into the nonprofit world and really enjoyed it. And I was working in a program focusing on women and children fleeing domestic violence. And at that time, we moved from a suburb of Portland into Portland itself. And there's a huge urban Native population in Portland. And so that was my exposure to really getting to know other Native people in Portland, forming friendships, really getting involved in causes. And it really gave me a sense of community. And so I decided to get my PhD. Well, if you're going to do a PhD, it should be very meaningful because it is blood, sweat, tears, and money. And by this time, I had been doing some volunteer work with a group that was offering spiritual services to Native Americans incarcerated in Oregon. So I had been going in as a support person, and then I ended up joining the board and being a board chair for a number of years. So I knew I wanted to concentrate on the issue of incarceration and healing. And so I had this opportunity to further my work at Coffee Creek Women's Correctional Institute, south of Portland. And I also did it because so many of my nieces and nephews are incarcerated. All of my brothers who lived to be adolescent or older have been incarcerated. And so it runs deeply in my family. And so because I couldn't be in Montana serving my own people, I knew that this would be a good thing for me to be doing. And so my PhD research was based upon a project that I did at the Women's Correctional Facility here in Portland. And it was a very meaningful experience. And, I carry that work on every single day now.
I don't know that I would be here today if it wasn't for the services that I got then. We were all traumatized, continuing being traumatized by incarceration, trying to find our way, navigating, the ways that we bicker as Indigenous women. But even still, just that community that we had, that shared experience, was impactful.
Yeah.
That's really it, is connections, so that people aren't alone. You know what I'm saying? And giving them some, and I hate using the term, giving them some tools to use, right? But really, it's a little bit, it's really just going back to our basics, right? Back to how we used to handle things and do things in the past.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about Medicine Wheel 12-Step, is because it does offer some suggestions, right? But really, it encourages your tribal traditions, your culture. And so, like, my people use a lot of corn pollen and cedar to smudge with, right? And but up here there's a lot of cedar and sage. We don't really burn a whole lot of sage, but yeah. So it allows people to really get involved and bring their culture out, right? You know, in addition to the connections, right, it's looking at the root cause of the problem.
Yes.
Because, you know, substance use, that's not the problem. That's a symptom.
Exactly.
You know, and so we really try to look at the root problem, and you know what it usually comes back to? Intergenerational trauma.
And what I seen time and time again was that people were felt as though their needs were met when there was some form of family approach to the situation. And it seemed to be effective, it seemed to meet the need, and it was beautiful to be able to slide into these spaces and be a sister, you know?
And sometimes it's really hard to, one, reach out to somebody and say, hey, I don't know this, you know, or that they're gonna understand. And I am a very firm believer that the people who have caused the most harm to themselves and to others need the most resources.
Yes.
They need the most healing. We need the most healing, right? And we're not here to judge people.
Right.
We're here to say, we're happy that you're in this place here today. What can we do to help you? What do you need?
What I do want to uplift about the prison experience was the women and the camaraderie and the sisterhood. And I've gotten the best advice from the people who are locked up and punished and, you know, mistreated. And so I just really wanted to represent them. I wanted them to know that I didn't forget about them. I wanted the world to know that the people that we were throwing away were the most valuable, insightful, compassionate people that really understood the power of accountability and also the power of, I would say, I don't want to say like companionship, but kind of like companionship, whether it was through a friendship or a sisterhood or an intimate relationship. It taught me that women were very much innate in creating those relationships.
It's very easy in incarceration to not work on yourself, to not heal.
Sure.
So individuals who do, that's huge.
With that mentorship and with that access to community and youth and women who own businesses, they gave me jobs, they gave me space, they had people welcome me home. And that's when I got to the Welcome Home Circle.
Okay.
Because I was thinking about if someone were to question me about why am I where I'm at and why others aren't where they are, I would say that it was directly due to the response and me coming back into the community and being welcomed home and supported by the community. And I thought that made a huge difference in how I seen my value, my place, what I was responsible for. So in the spirit of that, Louise had welcomed me home ceremonially. They sang me a song, those women welcomed me home. And I took off with that and I went running and wanted to give that same gift to others who were coming home and to welcome them back. The other thing that I seen, Carma, was that when people were coming into our office at, where I was working with the sexual assault and domestic violence, we would remedy every single harm and trauma that came into our building with family. The prescription was family. So if someone came in grieving their son, we had younger men to go and sit with her because maybe she needed to talk to a young man, or maybe she needed a sister because she has feelings about, or maybe she needs a dad, you know. So we became like a surrogate family.
And so looking to projects like yours, others that you and I have discussed, innovation is there, the talent is there. We just need to work harder to bring our people to those opportunities to do so. There is no one size fits all for a person coming out of prison. They have all had their traumas. If they didn't have their traumas before they went in, and let me tell you, they all did, they're certainly going to have their traumas when they come out. But for Native women in particular, 100% of them have had trauma, have had abuse. before they ever got in the criminal justice system, whether it was a juvenile or as an adult. And criminal justice system is not about healing. It's about punishment. And so they're not doing that hard personal work. They're just trying to stay alive in a really tough environment. So I'm really hoping that people will have things that they'll take away from it. I'm hoping that it will create further movement because we have to continue to move the issue forward because we have such high rates of incarceration, as an ethnic minority. And so it can't be just talking about it. It has to be, I can do this or I can get involved with that. So I'm pretty excited about it. And I'm so fortunate, I have this PhD and this work is based on that. And so I actually get a life where I get to carry that work forward and I do have my diploma on the wall in my office, I'll show it to you. But it's not about just having that diploma, it's about actually doing the work every single day. And I know how lucky I am to do that.
And so gentle action is an approach that begins from within a system. And with that approach, new forms of gentle action are developed then to address societal issues. And it's done in creative ways prior to taking action. And so it's an approach that begins with what F. David Peat describes as creative suspension of action.